Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the incredible episode 53 where you get to guess the surgical procedure edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. Probably not enough call for you. The answer, of course, is big teeth from the guy who looks like Jim Carrey, ladies and gentlemen. Big teeth. Got big teeth. I've had problems with my teeth my entire life, and they've just been bugging me forever. And I was able to get a great recommendation on a dentist, a very kind man, and he was able to get me a really great price. And so we have all these new teeth. Now, before we go back to the new teeth, I just thought I'd tell you all that these are the temporaries in there, and they look a little whiter than they need to, and they're not matched on the bottom, and they're still made out of kind of a plastic, so they don't have that kind of natural ceramic look yet. But I've often been accused of looking like Jim Carrey, and that's what it feels like. I don't know if that's what it looks like, but that's what it feels like. So let's crack these babies out and get a good look at them here. Yes. Hi, it's new teeth. They're a little uneven still. We're still working on the shape and the form and everything. And but I've never had like a really white smile, and now I have a really white smile. A little whiter than it should be right now. Somebody said in the comment section, you got to stay away from Joe Biden white because the video cameras can't handle that kind of luminance. The nice thing about the temporaries is you get to put them in and then you get to back them down and find out, where they feel and where they look. But these are the plastic teeth, and they're much bigger than my other teeth. They're all crowns all the way across, bridges in the back. And I had it done all at once because I have had, my mom is British. My dad is second generation British. And we ended up with good hair and bad teeth. And so I've never, ever had good teeth. When I was a little kid, working at the Miami Planetarium when I was 13 years old, they call it the first thing, everybody had nicknames there. And they called me termite because I had these really round front incisors. And I think I had some kind of problem with somebody. The dentist said it was a problem with a drug, like a antibiotic when you're a little kid. I had like a kind of a green sort of a film that would develop right up along the gum line. And no matter how many times you would go and clean them off, it would just come back like green. They're awful. So I had the front two done at Dr. Rodriguez Credit Dentist in North Hollywood back in 1989 or something like that. Got them straightened out a little bit, but they've never been good teeth. And in addition to them not being great cosmetically, the nice thing about getting them done is we got them all done, reconstructive stuff. I've had, honestly, folks, not real proud of this. I've probably had 6 root canals in my life. I had more mercury in the back. I had enough metal in the back of my mouth to build a battleship. And it does. Somebody just pointed out it affects the way I sound. It does. Some of the S's are still a little soft, and a lot of that's due to the fact that because they're temporaries, they're like I think like the front 4 or 5 or 6 are in one piece of plastic. It's not the individual bits of ceramic that I'm going to get. And likewise, the bottom is one piece of plastic. And so it doesn't flex very much. It's a little harder to form those S's. I'm sure that'll all go away. But I don't want it to be like, super, super white. But, I've never had like a great smile. Never had like a TV smile. And now I do. And not only that, I was sitting in there in the dentist chair, and I was saying to him, it just occurs to me that after we get these things finalized and finished and matched, my problems are going to more or less be over. And he said, not more or less, they're going to be over. For the rest of my life, I'm never going to have to worry about broken crowns. I've had, I don't know how many broken crowns I've had and how many cracked fillings and how many, like I said, lots and lots of root canals and just, nasty. And the bottom row was kind of snaggly and crooked, and when I'm a little aware of it. And anyway, so I'm doing great. And the amazing thing is they didn't hurt at all. I mean, I had almost everything done from scratch. But the guy is just a genius. I never took a Tylenol afterwards. Really just never Never took a Tylenol. And the alignment's a little funny. They don't seem they're quite level. I don't know whether that's because the teeth are a little out of alignment or whether my smile is. But we're getting it all done, and probably by the first week in January we'll have the permanents, and they won't be quite so fluorescent. They'll be a little more translucent, but they'll be a lot better, and they'll stay with me for the rest of my life. And so I saw a couple of people kind enough to ask, do they hurt? They don't hurt, and they don't. They feel funny. They feel funny because, first of all, they feel like plastic. The temporary teeth, when you do this and you rub them together, they feel like plastic because they are plastic. The new ones will be ceramic, and that'll be great. And then they also are just bigger. How much bigger, you ask? They're like that much bigger. They're like just huge. And I had somebody tell me your teeth were actually too small for your head before. Now I have not only white teeth, I have big teeth. And I have to, I've always been real honest with you guys, and I guess that's kind of part of the fun about the Stratosphere Lounge, is some of this stuff is not like terribly flattering or anything, but basically what they do is that they went in there, and they were all natural teeth up front, and they file them down so that they can put a crown over them, a full set of crowns. So they're not actual veneers, and they're not implants. The teeth up front and along the sides were they were pretty strong, but they were not real pretty. And the main reason I got it done, by the way, was because my jaw alignment was getting worse. It was affecting my sleeping. It was affecting my breathing. I saw, I don't know, it was one of these afterburners. I think it might have been the one about Texas. And I was watching the afterburner about Texas, and I was so aware of my breathing. A couple people have commented on it every now and then, but it was a lot of, kind of thing. And so the main thing that I wanted to have done with them was to just get the whole jaw aligned and the teeth aligned and all that other stuff. And I was actually starting to click my teeth a little bit as I got older, and just didn't need that. So there was actually a pretty pressing health reason and physical reason to go ahead and do it. And we were just talking about doing the back ones, getting the engineering problem solved. Because honestly, the amount of work done back there now looks like the blueprints for the cantilever bridge, some kind of bridge spanning some gigantic distance. All these braces and bridges and anyway, it'll be nice to be done with all of those. But anyway, so they found on your teeth. Now the front two had been crowns for a long time, since around 25 years, I guess. They weren't great crowns, but they were permanent. And so when they do the problem I had with the lowers were very crooked. If you looked at them, if you zoom in and watch any of my videos frame by frame at 20 or 30 magnification, which is how I look at every one of my videos, 25 power frame by frame criticism of all this stuff. The bottom row was very, very crooked. They were small and they were crooked. They weren't so much out of place relative to each other, but they were twisty. So in order to fix that all in one piece, he basically just went in and ground down the each individual tooth on the bottom, so that instead of me having dental implants to hold the crowns in place, I've got the original teeth root. With all that said, I said all that just to tell you this. When they take all of the top ones out and all of the bottom ones out at the same time, in order to do the alignment. And I remember, this is the last thing I remember coming out of I didn't have full general anesthesia, but I had a little cup of kind of honey-colored liquid that, man, I have no memory of it. I was in the chair for 6-7 hours on the 23rd, and I have no memory of it. But no pain, nothing. Really no pain at all. Just the first day the discomfort was so hard. It was horrible. I was actually kind of like, it felt like I had a mouthful of dice. And I couldn't, and they were cracking. The temps were cracking. Went in there a couple days later on Christmas Day, bless this guy, and filed them all down and got the temps in a much better place. So anyway, what I was trying to tell you is I go in to get them refitted on Christmas Day. I'm fully conscious now. And we take the bottoms off in one piece, and all of those teeth roots are there. And they're not pretty, and they're not as thick as you would think they'd be. They're thinner, and they're pointy, and they're kind of curvy, and then the top ones came out, and you realize, man, you want to make yourself look 70 years older, that's the way to do it. Anyway, I was in the dentist chair and I snapped a quick selfie of me. I know it's a little repulsive and vile and gross, and I really shouldn't do it, but I took a quick selfie of what I looked like with both the tops and the bottoms off before the permanent individual ones go off, when I have these giant plastic things taken off. And just to give you an idea of how sharp and pointy those teeth roots are, I just snapped a quick selfie of myself. And you're gonna have to forgive me because I was not in a very good mood, and I was, feeling a little puffy after the surgery. But you can see I was just not in a happy mood, and I just decided to take the picture because, what the heck, give you an idea of what they look like. I was able afterwards to go out into the room and get a little work done out there in the dentist chair on my iPad, because I sat there for most of the day on Christmas Day as well. Just kind of sat out there and got some notes done, and I was able to do a little bit of writing. So I popped another quick shot in the mirror from a distance, and that helped quite a lot. But other than that, they're there. So somewhere around first week in January, 6th or 7th or so, I will get the permanents, and then we'll see. But it's nice finally to have a big smile, and I expect I'll get them all a little more aligned, a little more even, and then I'll be golden, man. And anyway, I'm happy. So I'm very happy, and I'm happy about them. Not just cosmetically, I'm happy about them, in terms of this ongoing perpetual headache. Last thing I'll say on the tooth story, just to really drum up the volume on the drama levels. I've had 2 times in my life where I was in knock you to the ground pain. I mean, just literally put you in a ball on the ground. Pain. One of them was back in 2008, just when I started at PJTV, and I think I wrote an essay I liked quite a lot out of it. Ran it on National Review. But I had an actual kidney stone when I was editing my previous show before I went to PJTV. I worked on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout, which is a movie talk show with Peter Bart and Peter Goober. I did 180 episodes over 5 or 6 years. And I was working. There were three episodes left, and I went in on like a Tuesday morning, I guess it was Tuesday morning. I was about my last episode on the show before I went to PJTV, and I got in there in the morning, and I went in and got some coffee for the morning, and I felt like this kind of vague kind of discomfort, almost like I was sitting against something on the back of my chair, like there was like I'd had a some kind of a something or other in the back of my jacket, and I just felt a sort of a vague, discomfort on my left side in the back. So I went to make this as actually tea. Come to think of it, and as I'm making the tea, man, that actually is really sore. What did I do? Did I just bash into something? Come back into the edit bay, and I sit down, and 2 or 3 minutes later, I have a pain in my left kidney that was so bad that I just had to like bend over, and then I had to like get out of the chair. And we had a couch in the back of the edit bay, and I actually had to like kneel down on that couch and just kind of put my head down. It was just starting to really, 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 really hurt. And 5 minutes after that, I was lying on the couch. I just couldn't move. And the people who I was working with had this, bizarre idea, some sort of maybe you should go to the hospital idea. Seriously? No, I'm not going to the hospital. But 2 minutes after they said you should go to the hospital, 2 minutes after that I said, somebody get me to the hospital. So anyway, long story short, I had a really pretty bad kidney stone, and I didn't have health insurance at the time. I was ready to pay cash for it, and I went to this tiny little hospital in Hollywood, which was the closest one we could find to the office, to the studios. And I had an intern, a PA, production assistant, drive me over there, and I'm just like hallucinating out the car. I mean, I'm about to throw up. It hurt so bad in the drive over there. Get in, and it's like literally like stagger into this hospital office, and I'm leaning up. I might have actually been like crying against the admission counter, and the woman said, "Can I help you?" Yeah, I'm really hurting in the back here. What do you what's the problem? I don't know. The problem is I'm about to pass out from pain, so if I don't finish the sentence, please don't take it personally. I see. And then he talked about the insurance, and I said, look, I'll pay cash for this. Here's a credit. Here's my debit card, whatever. Next thing you know, I'm in a changing room in the back. It was like kind of like an emergency room, but it was a small, weird little hospital. Nice, kind of a homey little hospital. Actually, almost like a community college, cottagey kind of a hospital. And next thing you know, they said, well, here, put on this gown. And I go into this little bathroom there, aside from this main examination room. And I remember going there and put the gown on, and I just left my wallet and my keys and my phone and everything in my pants pocket, and I just didn't care. I just climbed into this hospital bed, and there were about 4 or 5 other people in this room. And it just started getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm going to spare you most of the gory details, but they have a catheter that they have to insert, and this catheter, it was like I said, it was a small hospital. It wasn't exactly like Cedars-Sinai or UCLA. And I think it was a Bulgarian pre-war catheter from 1940, about the diameter of a garden hose, I would say. And no anesthesia. And this is the only thing I'll just say about it. I was in there for 3 hours, and once they had an IV in my arm, they gave me some Tylenol. They're going to give me some liquid Tylenol, what they injected into the bag. Hilarious. So after they gave me the liquid Tylenol, about an hour later, I'm mewling. I'm not even mumbling anymore. I'm just mewling. By the way, I thought a kidney stone would look like a stone, like a little, like one of those little nerds, those little pop rock kind of things, kind of smooth little stone with, little, just a little irregular little thing, like a little pebble. They look like sand burrs, and those sand burrs were the bane of my existence growing up on Key Biscayne. They're these horrible, spiky, they're just designed to rip you up. So after an hour of the Tylenol, they finally said, well, we'll get you some Demerol. And I remember Demerol saved me from my tooth story, which I'll get to in a second. I said, oh, thank God, Demerol at last. And I'd been in the hospital bed at that point for about an hour and a half when they finally got the Demerol, because they had to walk upstairs 4 flights and sign it out because of all the drug addicts stealing all the narcotics from the treatment floor. Thanks, drug addicts. So that took 45 minutes to get the Demerol, and they came back with the Demerol, injected that Demerol into the bag, and nothing. And I vaguely had a sense that instead of the room being filled with this blinding white pain, that after the Demerol had sunk in, it was somehow reduced that white blinding pain to the left side of the room. And I sat there in that kind of pain, just unmanned by it. This really hurts. And so the short answer to this is, after 4 hours, a little over 4 hours, they finally, some doctor came in, because we were waiting for our ultrasound technician to show up I think the ultrasound technician was in Scotland or something. And so when they finally got there, I nearly passed out when they put the catheter in. That hurt so bad. I really remember thinking I'm going to lose consciousness. This hurt so bad. So after 4.5 hours or something like that, the ultrasound technicians entered the building, and finally I had a real doctor come down and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go upstairs and get you some stuff. And that took another half hour. So pushing 5 hours, this guy comes back with a hypodermic, and he puts it into the little, what's the word, thing on the side of the IV bag. And he says, "This, you're going to like this." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, it's called Dilaudid. And I said, and he injected this Dilaudid into this IV bag, and then he squeezed the IV bag. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't know if you've ever been in this kind of pain. I had this kind of pain, and I had a tooth pain earlier. I'll get to in a sec. And when you hurt that bad for that long, sincere apologies to our military people and women who've delivered babies over 22 hours and all that other stuff. But when you're in that kind of pain for that long, you get to a place, I remember this both times because it's happened to me twice. I remember very clearly thinking, I have no memory of what it's like not to be in agony, and I can't imagine what it would be like not to be hurting anymore. I have no memory of it, and I have no way to imagine what it would like. But they put that Dilaudid into that bag and squeezed that bag, and I mean like 10 seconds later, I was like, okay. And then 30 seconds later, I'm like, this okay. And then 60 seconds later, I don't know what doors they opened, but unicorns came into the room and little leprechauns and rainbows and I saw a bright sunrise and I felt, man, this is great. I could stay at this hospital forever. These are the greatest people I've ever met, and what a wonderful place this is. This bed is so comfortable and warm, and look at the smile on that lady's face. And where is that wonderful doctor again, so I can give him everything I own, so I can just basically sign my net worth over to this guy. And that's when I decided, I don't know if I'm ever going to have kids. I'd like to someday, but if I do, I'm going to name it boy or girl. First boy or girl I ever have is going to be named Dilaudid. That's going to be their first name. Man, that was nice. It just felt so good. You can understand why people be drug addicts, honestly. I don't know what that would do to you if you're starting from zero. And that was so far in the pain hole that just was like, oh, good God. One last thing about this little hospital. I didn't get to a semi-private room. I kind of stayed in the emergency room. But the emergency room was sectioned off, and there were probably 5 or 6 beds in there. And they drew curtains around me. Not that I knew or cared by this point. And I wasn't moaning. I was like weeping. I wasn't like, it hurts. I was just like, oh God, just like really hurting. And what was so really, remarkable and really sweet about the whole experience was I could hear people out there for about 3 or 4 hours, and I could hear them voices, and they were saying, hang in there, man, it's going to be okay, hang in there, it's going to get better, hang in there. I never saw their faces, and you could tell they were like all characters. One of them was like, it was like Norma Desmond. You could hear the voice of this old woman, really old woman, very sweet, very kind, very polite, old school breeding, and she used to be an actress, and now she's in her 80s. I never saw her face, but it's just like, okay, there's this character. Then there's some other guys like a street performer, and then there was some guy who was just a Mexican guy who was really, everybody's like nice as they could be, and it was a weird sort of a family thing. So that was back in 2008. But anyway, back to the teeth, and we'll get on with the show. Back in about, let's just say about 84, 85, something like that. Like I said, bad teeth my entire life, and horrible wisdom teeth and horrible root canals and everything. And back around 84, 85, I was doing a planetarium show at about, it was a Friday night show as late as about 10, 11 o'clock at night, I guess, something like that. Laser show, I want to say. It was probably Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and I was, I'd done probably 15 shows that day starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I just burned out. And all of a sudden, I don't know if I bit something or whether it just suddenly happened or whatever. But the next thing I know, I start feeling this pain in my left back jaw here. And that got worse real fast. And it got worse so fast, so bad, that all of a sudden I felt like the whole left side of my face start to go numb. And then I could feel it down into my arms. I swear to God, I swear to you, I felt that toothache in my hip. In my hip. And I just went down, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just kneeling on the floor with my my forehead on the side of this control console, just like, oh my God. And I had a friend come by and pick me up, and we're driving to the hospital. And I said, you got to stop the car. You stop the car, dude. I'm going to just barf here. And I got out of the car, and it was a wet night, and it was in Florida, and it was kind of cold. It was winter. And I went out in the middle. I just walked out in the middle of this field like an animal, like some kind of animal that's been torn up or gut shot. You just go and look for a place to lay down and die. Honest to God, that was it's almost like an instinctive kind of thing. So I walk out of this car, and he can't do anything. He's feeling awful. And I walk out to the middle of this field, and I remember just standing there, bent over with my hands on my knees, just trying to get some kind of handle on this pain here. And I just went down, and I remember lying curled up on this dewy, wet grass on this baseball field in Coral Gables, Florida, or something like this. And I was just like down, just like rocking. I was like, this is never gonna end. It's never gonna end. It's been 2.5 hours or whatever, never gonna end. Finally, they got me to the hospital. They gave me a couple of, there's a codeine. What's that codeine-based thing that's not nearly as nice? And they gave me those, and it didn't do anything. And finally, at dawn, 5 hours later, dawn, they make an emergency thing to get me into an oral surgeon. He shows up at about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I am just I had this codeine thing, didn't even put a dent in it, and I was in this chair, and he gave me some Demerol, and I remember that same exact feeling that I was going to have 10, 15 years later with the kidney stone. That sense of there's no world before the pain. There's no world after the pain. I can't imagine what it would be like not to hurt, and not just hurt. I just can't imagine what life is like without everything in the universe being centered around this, either here or back there. That's the whole world. That's everything. That's just this white light. It's an actual light. It's just like this light that you have to stare at. And after, again, about 5-6 hours, finally this guy gave me this Demerol. And I'm in this oral surgery facility, and his nurse came in, and I'm like, oh, thank God I live in the 20th century, 21st century for the second one. Thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God. And by the time that Demerol had kicked in with the tooth, I remember lying in this dentist chair. I'm back like here, and this guy's got the curved pliers to pull this wisdom tooth thing out, which had impacted the nerve, and the nerve runs your whole jaw, and that nerve goes all the way down the left side of your body. And he's working on it, he's doing this thing. And then this guy, who was grown man, 220-pound guy, got up. He got up. I'm lying back like this, and this guy got up on the chair, and I remember his knees like on my chest like this. He got up on top of me, and he took something that looked like a curved piece of steel, because that's what it was. Took a curved piece of steel, and he put it on this tooth, and he had a hammer. I know this sounds insane. I know this sounds insane, but this is what actually happened to me when I was probably 25 or 24, something like that. This curved piece of steel, like a chisel, but rounded, and he put it on this tooth here, and he got his knees up on my chest, and he's on top of me like this with this hammer, and he starts going bam, 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 and I hear this crack sound. Now the Demerol by this point is in, and I don't care. He could have sawed my head off. I wouldn't have cared. I just wouldn't have cared. That crack, 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 and I hear this crack, and I can feel a crack. It doesn't hurt anymore, thank God. I'm as happy as I can be by this point. I'm just like, hey, you are the best, dude. When you're done with this, let me buy you a car or whatever you'd like, honestly. And then it's like, and the sensations are so strange because you just remember little things, just little things. I remember lying there with my eyes closed, and I remember feeling like the weight of this guy's body on me, and I remember the sensation of like shock and pressure, but no pain at all. And I remember hearing that crack, crack sound, and then I remember like lying there and being totally cool, like, oh, this is awesome, this is great. And I hear this little like kink, 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 and I'm lying there with my eyes closed. I said, what's a tinking sound? And he said, well, we had to section your tooth to get it out. What does that mean? We had to basically break it in half. I said, how come there's so many tinks if you broke it in half? He said, we had to basically break most of your jawbone too. We had to, this wisdom tooth that apparently hooked in there, we had to basically just, these are little pieces of jawbone we're pulling out of your mouth. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Okay. Do what you have to do, man. I'm ready to go. I'm it's just horrible. It's just horrible. It's so horrible. And I tell you this whole long, ridiculous, absurd 36-minute story only to tell you guys that those days are pretty much over. I'm not going to be facing that anymore. And I'll close with this. You genuinely I fully understand that we have veterans out there, and we have people who've experienced actual pain, and some of you have experienced this kind of pain for days. And I've heard childbirth is this bad. I've heard women who've had kidney stones and bad childbirth said the kidney stones were worse, but we're not going to have a Brian Regan-style argument about whose pain level goes the highest. And by the way, if you want a real laugh, go to YouTube and watch Brian Regan's story about being in the emergency room and how he made the mistake of saying his pain was like a 6 or a 7 or something. But say a 9. Say 9. Everybody say 9. But you really, both times I really do remember, both during it and especially coming out of it, I really do remember just being filled with this really, like, number one, this overwhelming sense of gratitude for all of the medicine and all of the techniques and all of just for the luck of not only living in a time when you have this stuff, but living in a place when you have this stuff. And the second thing that I remember very clearly, both times, as I was coming out of this, was like, how did we get here? How many generations of ancestors do I have that went through this? Most all of them. In fact, you can pretty much say virtually all of them, almost all of them. Hard to believe that if you go back, 200,000 generations or whatever it is, before we start seeing fins on our hands, that just about every single one of them had this kind of pain at least once, probably multiple times, and more often than not, it killed them. And I just, it's like, you really, if you don't get down on your philosophical and moral knees and express a great deal of gratitude for that, then there's something wrong with you. Because, pioneer forefathers and my family with their bad British teeth, mill workers and coal miners, and my great grandfather and his father ahead of him were cotton carters, and they sit there with these, I talked about this before, little pieces of wood with these like steel bristles, and they would just do this. They just align cotton fibers for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, in these little tiny, filthy air, and these drafty cold mills in Lancashire, England, where it's freezing cold, much colder winters than we have today. And then they'd go back to their homes, and there'd be 10 or 11 of them living in a little, what we'd consider to be a 2-bedroom apartment, really? 3-bedroom apartment? 2-bedroom apartment? The whole thing's heated by one coal-burning stove that sits down in the living room, and you wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is you break the ice on the water that you wash your face with. It's like, good Lord. You actually start thinking about things like, even the little things. That expression, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's hard for us to appreciate this today because we think, how hard would it be not to throw the baby out with the bathwater? But you start getting into this. When I started doing my genealogy stuff, you've got coal miners and mill workers in Lancashire, England, in the little town of Wigan. Not Wigham. If it had been Wigham, if I'd been named Ralph Wigham somewhere back in the history, I would be over the moon pleased. A little town in Lancashire, England, not far from the White Hill region. And I started doing the research on this, and these guys, these miners, any miners, coal miners, they'd come back filthy. And I don't mean like dirty. I mean, they come back filthy. And they had to pump the water, and they had to carry the water more often than not. It's not that you just walk into the bathroom at the end of the day and turn on the hot water and hit the shower. I had to physically carry every bucket of water up to a small little tin or steel bathtub thing. So people take a bath probably once a week. But this is the thing that's really kind of, revolting and also very clarifying for those of us who bitch and moan about our problems all day. So you have a family like my grandfather's, great-great-grandfather's families. He's got 9 kids, 10, 11, 7, never less than 7 that I could see. And so on bath day, I don't know, is that a Sunday? Who knows? Probably it's a Saturday before the Sunday. What you would get is, a bathtub, and they would bring pots of water and they'd heat it up on a wood-burning stove, which would take 45 minutes, to boil a little bit of water. So they might be able to warm it up a little bit, not for your comfort, because comfort didn't matter. Maybe warm it up a little bit because the hot water will dislodge some of this stuff a little easier than the cold water will. So what actually happens is, Dad gets into the bath first because he's the dirtiest, and he sits there and he's got this hard lye soap, and he's covered in this freezing water, and maybe occasionally there'll be a little pour a little warmer water in there, but you can't just turn on a tap. I had to go outside and pump this thing and bring it inside. So after Dad takes his bath, it's Mom's turn, and Mom is looking at water that's black. It's just black with coal dust. And after Mom, it's eldest kid, then the next youngest kid, the next youngest kid. After you get through 25, 30, 30 kids of this, it's just nothing but soap, scum, and filth. And when you finally done, you put the baby in there and wash the baby, and you can throw the baby out with the bath water because it's essentially like washing a baby in India ink. And I just think, this whole theme of the 2.5 days thing that I did for the Occupy Wall Street crowd, it really would do people a world of good to have to go through this for 2.5 days. 3.5 days, sorry. 3.5 days, 365-day year. 3.5 days is 1% of a year. Once 1% of our year, we should have to go back and live the way our ancestors lived. Just one, not 10% of the year, 1% of the year. Just every year, we should just have to deal with it. And it would remind us of an awful lot of things. So anyway, enough about all that stuff. It's hilarious. I think that I like the smile on it. I don't know if it's the teeth are crooked or my smile's crooked, but we'll get it all straightened out. But anyway, happy smile, miracle drugs, amazing age, and I don't think I'm going to be going down to the ground for dental problems again, ever. Which is a lovely, lovely thought. Anyway, here we go. So, episode 53, moving on in the incredible Stratosphere Lounge thing, and 43-minute, half the show dental rant. Thank you very much. Try to control your brightness controls, or maybe you could wear sunglasses. And somebody here is doing luxury. You had it easy. By the way, before I move on, just because Daryl Anderson said it in the social stream here. Honestly, guys, there's not a lot. I make a lot of recommendations, and I say you should see this, you should see that. But I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Get a pen and paper out, and if you haven't seen it, go and find a sketch on YouTube called 4 Yorkshiremen. And it's been done 100 times. I think they probably wrote the routine back in the late 50s. But if you can find a non-live Monty Python version, because when they do it live, they're all playing to the crowd. There's an older version with the Goons. I think there's one version with Rowan Atkinson and Cleese and Michael Palin and a couple of other guys. 4 Yorkshiremen, it's called. And it's 4 Yorkshiremen who've gone on to be successful, telling stories about who had it worst. And I have to tell you, I about had a brain hemorrhage. I laughed so hard first time I heard 4 Yorkshiremen. It is a classic comedy piece. There's a bunch of different versions of it. But honestly, when you hear... we lived in a house and we didn't have a roof, but we were glad to have it. Roof, you say, huh? Luxury. We lived out in the street. We lived in the lake. We used to have to eat a handful of cold gravel, go down to the mill, work 23 hours a day, wake up a half an hour before we went to bed. It's just hilarious stuff. Really, really brilliant. So go look at it. It's a 3-minute, 4-minute routine in YouTube called 4 Yorkshiremen. It's hilarious. So moving on. Okay, so Vince Yoder, beg your pardon, Vince, says, "Hey, Bill, greetings from a steely-eyed missile man of the 91st Missile Wing up in snowy Minnow, North Dakota. Greetings, Vince. You're a real deal steely-eyed missile man. I'm glad to know that... I'm very glad to know that if there's anything I can ever do for the people who sit in those underground bunkers on top of nuclear weapons, keeping us safe from these savages, anything I can do for you guys is the least I can do." So Vince says, "Hope you and your mother had a great Christmas holiday." We did, thank you very much. I just got back from Florida this morning. I'm beat. Flew there and back, and It's a lot of flying, and I'm tired. Anyway, here's my question. He says, what do you think of the recent Breitbart article written, in parentheses, by Putin, talking about how Russia is in a better position than America to secure Western civilization due to Russia being governed or ruled from a conservative and outwardly pro-religious position? Haven't read the article. I didn't have time to read it. But what I presume is that Breitbart ran an article ostensibly written by Putin, basically saying, here's why Vladimir Putin is actually a better defender and champion of conservative principles than the President of the United States of America. I did see a quick reaction on this from Glenn Reynolds over at Instapundit, and I kind of agree with him on this. It's interesting rhetorically, and it's pointed, and I'll get to that in a second. But I'm not one of these people that says because Vladimir Putin is a strong man, and because Vladimir Putin is protecting his people, and because Vladimir Putin doesn't believe in political correctness, and because Vladimir Putin is returning his country to these kind of sound principles of family and all this other stuff. That doesn't make me a fan of Vladimir Putin. Putin is a murderer. He's murdered people with his own hands. Of that, I'm quite positive. Without question, he's ordered thousands of people to their deaths. There's extremely good evidence that he ordered the sabotage and subsequent plane crash of a commercial jetliner that had troublesome Polish dignitaries on board. He's a KGB murderer, and he's an animal, and he's a genuine savage, and he's not our friend. And as Glenn pointed out in Instapundit, I think what many Americans like us look at, and when we see Putin, because I have to convince, I will say this, with all of that said, as Glenn pointed out, and as I suppose your point here too, Vince, there's much to admire about him in terms of his strength and his mental toughness. And in many cases, the president of Russia is far, far less of a communist than the president of the United States. He really is. He's just not a good guy, and makes you wonder what would happen if it was a good guy who had some of these policies. Now, Putin has policies towards homosexuals that are just, barbaric. They're barbaric, and that needs to be said. And his policies towards a lot of things are barbaric. But I think the reason that some Americans are drawn to him is that he is not putting up with any of this PC rollover. There's a difference between accepting homosexuals and glorifying their lifestyle and making it mandatory that you not only accept it, but that you endorse it and you promote it, as we found out from the Duck Dynasty thing. Putin doesn't put up with any of that crap. And I think the only thing I'll say about Putin, positive, is that mentally he is so much more of a match for Barack Obama. I mean, it really is Bambi versus Godzilla out there. You see pictures of Putin. He's out there, he's out there hunting Siberian tigers without a shirt in the middle of the snow, and he's using a bow that he fashioned from, his mother's femur, and he somehow needed to, he sectioned off a part of his own intestines and strung it together to make the bow string, this kind of super tough guy kind of thing. And I find that to be silly. I just find it to be silly. All these pictures of him out there riding a horse through the stream, with his bulging muscles, and he's got an AK or something strapped over his back. This kind of posturing machoism. The fact that appeals to his people is an indication that we are facing some really, really backwards and brutal people. And Vince, if you weren't sitting out there on top of peacemakers, with kilotons, if not megatons, of the bright white light of freedom on top of them, then we'd be at the mercy of these animals and savages. When I look at Putin, all I think about is, I remember when we had a president who rode a horse And I remember a couple presidents who rode horses and would go out and clear brush for recreation, and who weren't afraid of things, and who weren't afraid to face the fact that we have enemies in the world, and who had a clear understanding of who we were and what we were about. And I've seen pictures of Ronald Reagan on a horse. I've seen pictures of George Bush on a horse. I've seen them both out there clearing brush, doing manly things. And I considered both of them to be strong men, confident men, guys who didn't have a whole lot of doubt about what they believed. Now, you didn't have to agree with them. And there were cases where I disagreed with Bush quite a lot, and cases where I disagreed with Reagan rarely. But I did disagree with them. But I thought they were strong, good men. And I think Vladimir Putin is a strong, bad man. And this is the fundamental difference, really. And something we have to be very careful about. I don't think Barack Obama is a strong man or a good man. And you can spin this Mandela funeral any way you want to. There's always the great thing about the Obama administration is there's always somebody willing to come forward and fall on their sword. So the guy that took the pictures of Michelle giving him the evil eye while Obama's flirting with this kind of pretty, was it Danish or Finnish prime minister? And then when he goes and comes back, now they're switching seats so that he's not sitting next to her anymore. I'm sorry, you're not spinning that. That man is whipped. He's whipped. He's always been whipped. He's been raised by women his whole life. He's had nothing but women in his life. His mom was extremely forceful, very nasty piece of work. Barack Obama's mom, Stanley. His mom, Stanley. How would she not be a basket case with a name like Stanley? And his grandmother, who raised him, seems by all accounts to have been actually a very decent person, but a strong person. And the men in Obama's life, Dad disappeared. Before he had, Dad disappeared, if the official story is true, a week or two after he was born. Hardly ever saw him again. Dad went to Harvard, and Stanley and Mom went to Vancouver, I guess, and back to Seattle. So here's a guy who's never had a strong dad in his life. He's had his grandfather, who had very sketchy, hanging out with Frank Marshall Davis in these horrible places, surrounded by pornographic cartoons of Disney characters when he's 5 or 6 years old growing up. I'd love to tell you that this is just me being a right-wing lunatic. And that's not to say I'm not a right-wing lunatic. But that's all from his book, in his own words, his own autobiography, which is stapled together from pieces of things that actually happened, or may actually have happened, or if didn't actually happen, should have happened. And these things are woven together to create little scenes that are not real history, but what the history should have been. But in any event, he was just completely whipped by his wife. And if you listen to how he talks about her and how she talks about him, every time she gets on Oprah, we talked about this before, I don't want to spend too much more time with this, but every time Michelle gets on Oprah, she says, yes, Barack sometimes doesn't take a shower often enough, or he doesn't clean up his socks, or I have to clean up after him on this, or Barack made a mess of the place, or Barack likes to play too much video games, or Barack is out there, and then when he talks about her, you'll hear him say things like, yeah, Michelle won't let me have an iPhone. Michelle won't let me play more than an hour of this. Michelle will only let me watch an hour of basketball. Michelle will let me do this. Michelle won't let me do that. And I don't care if you're the president or not. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's unmanly and embarrassing. And as I said before, if I'm out in public on TV and I'm married to somebody, I don't care what my position is. I could just be, I could be the guy who doesn't matter. Right? But if I'm out in public, or certainly if I'm on television or on the news, and my wife is saying to me, yeah, he's kind of a mess. Yeah, he doesn't, it's like, after that taping is over, we're going back home. We're going to have a serious conversation. And for God's sakes, if I'm an elected official, and if I'm the president of the United States, I'm going to have a little talk with Michelle, and I'm going to basically say, you will never speak about me that way in public ever again, or you will be the former First Lady of the United States, and I'll still be the president. You will never, ever speak about me in public that way. Ever. Again, ever. And if you don't like it, I can arrange to have a helicopter take you someplace else. Any questions? And so when you compare a guy who's that weak in every way, and if you don't think the Russians look at this, of course they do. They do. And you compare him to a guy like Vladimir Putin, who's probably garroted people, certainly murdered them, and certainly ordered them murdered It's Bambi versus Godzilla. And I'll close this little thought by saying, folks, we have the best military not only in the world, best military in the history of the world. We have the amount of power that is at our fingertips, and the ability to project that power around the world is awesome, awe-inspiring. And again, made possible through guys like Vince and all the rest of you veterans out there, retired or active duty. But the thought that occurred to me is, it doesn't matter how strong your sword and shield are, if your sword arm and your shield arm are attached to a coward or a weakling or both. Dave Hilton says, why is it I keep hearing on the news about how our economy is steadily improving? It just seems like I'm getting conflicting views from conservative media, mainstream media, and even in reality. What makes them so confident that the economy is doing so well, especially when middle classers like myself are struggling every day just to make ends meet? It's a great question. Dave, if you take imagine a white sheet of paper that's covered with little tiny little dots. Connect a dot thing, when you draw, you like connect 10, 11, 12, 13, next thing, hey, it's a giraffe. Those kind of dots. But imagine you put a bunch of those dots on a giant tablecloth, and you didn't have any numbers. You just had dots and a white piece of paper, and somebody gave you a green crayon. You could connect the dots and draw any damn thing you wanted to. You select what hits you want and what misses you want, and you can draw anything you want to. You can draw a sunrise, you can draw a dragon, you can draw a frying pan, you can draw anything you want. And so when you hear that the economy is getting better, what it looks like to me when I have a chance to talk to guys who are really understand what's going on, you hear things that even at first glance you realize are kind of silly. For example, let's say the unemployment rate is down below 8%. Let's say it goes below 7%. Hey, that's great economic news. Think of all the great economic news. The economy is improving. The employment rate is down. And then you find out that the employment rate is measured by people applying for unemployment insurance, or for people going out looking for work and trying to get insurance. So a job rather. So what you find is that if the unemployment rate goes down, one of the reasons it can go down is that people who've been out of work for 3 years just stop looking for work. They just give up. And if those people don't go out looking for work, then we don't count them as being unemployed. If they give up and they just say, I'm done. I'm either going to live on savings or I'm going to live on the government dole. Once those people stop looking for work, they are no longer considered unemployed. So frankly, if every single person in America stopped going to work and stopped looking for work and just took the government paycheck, our unemployment rate would be zero, because no one's looking for work, because everyone's given up. So that's how you get these kind of conflicting signals, Dave. And the stock market is doing really well. It's reached record highs. We don't know where that number would be if we'd had a sound economy. We do know that the corporations out there and private businessmen are sitting on trillions of dollars of cash reserves, and they're not starting new businesses for a number of reasons. But first reason is they just don't know what President Imperial Whim is going to do next. He took 3 years to pass the law, and then aspects of the law hurt his poll numbers. So with a wave of his finger, he says, that part of the law we're just going to ignore. This part of the law we're going to ignore for a year, but then we'll turn it back on in a year. This part of the law we'll enforce or not enforce depending on how I feel on Thursday. And when you start asking businessmen, actual people who know how to make actual money and who actually know how to hire people and give them jobs, and they'll tell you everywhere, they'll say, we've got cash and we see opportunities, but we're not getting into this mess. Not now. Not with this. Why would I invest, forget $100 million. Why would I invest $100,000? Why would I invest $5,000 to start a business when tomorrow, at the whim of the president, some completely new rule will come along and I will be legally forced to comply with, and will mean that I simply can't make a profit anymore. I'm going to be hit with this insurance plan that I'm going to have to pay for all of my employees, and I can't pay it, so I'm out of business. So you wonder when you see things like, the Dow's at 15,000 or 16,000 or whatever. you ask yourself, well, first of all, what would it be if this economy were run sensibly by the people that control the money supply? Because the people in the government cannot create wealth, and they can't manage wealth, they can't organize wealth, they can't deliver wealth. All they can do is control the number of shiny shells that we use to exchange for wealth. And what they've done is, once you take once you take interest rates down to zero or near zero, you can't go past that. This easing and this printing money to keep money available. Here's some free money. Start a new business. Hey, look, the economy's reviving. Look, things are starting to move. Well, they're starting to move because the government is printing money and handing it out with all these benefits and stimulus packages and all this other stuff. But it's not real money, and it's not real businesses to the degree that they're not founded upon the kind of principles that make sense. If the government wasn't printing money, and every time you print a dollar, then all of the dollars that we hold in terms of savings and assets is worth 1/400 millionth less than it used to. You don't have to explain that to most people, but if you've got $1,000 in savings and the government prints enough money so that now everybody just gets an extra $1,000, that money that you've been saving for maybe years and years and years back when money was worth something, now everybody has $1,000. And let's say everybody puts it in savings and all that money's out there in the market. So what happens? Prices go up. The prices go up because there's money out there. So if you'd saved and saved and saved and you had $1,000 in the bank, and then the government just prints up $1,000 and you get it through some government program or something, what's the point of having saved all those years? Your savings are now worthless, or essentially worthless, because now the money's out there, everybody's raising their prices, so your savings get worth less and less and less. And the worst thing of this guy taking over things like the student loan program, remember that little scandal? It's hard to keep track of the scandals now. But back a year or two ago, it was a pretty big deal when Obamacare passed. They also took over student loans. So instead of a bank loaning a kid money for a college education, which is what happened to me, the government hands them out. And then the government says, we're going to charge you this really low interest rate, and you can, spend $300,000 on getting your degree in medieval Renaissance poetry, Italian Renaissance poetry. And if you go work for the government, then you won't have to pay it back. And when you start realizing that the government is backing these student loans and putting today's college graduates into $400,000 worth of debt, you realize of all of the problems and all of the evil that this costs, the one thing that really is the most offensive to me is that it makes chumps out of all of you good, decent, sane, hard-working people who could have bought a large screen TV, or you could have bought a trip to, Thailand or Australia or Germany, or you could have seen the Alps, or you could have gone to a solar eclipse, or you could have bought a big screen TV, or you could have done something. You could have added an extension in your house, but you didn't. You didn't do any of that stuff. You saved your money for your kids' education, and then along comes Mr. Socialism, and he prints so much money that the people who didn't save are getting these giant college loans. And because the universities are not immune to market pressures, when they see so much money available, the cost of a university education has gone up by a factor of 5, 10, 15 since I was in college? 20, 50? Who knows? And what he's done by giving away printed money, you can't give away wealth. We can't make wealth. The government can't print wealth. You can print money, but you can't print wealth. You have to make wealth. You have to earn it. You have to create it. And those of you people out there who created wealth your entire life and took a portion of that wealth and saved it so that you could help your kids create more wealth, they turned you into chumps. But you didn't need to save that. You could have bought something with it. Because we're going to give it to your kid for free, and we're going to give him a ton of it. And if you can't pay it back, then we'll write it off. And you can't do this forever. You can't do this forever. We owe $17,000 billion. And that's just what we owe. When you look at what we're on the hook for, it's $100,000 billion. And sooner or later, people are going to make this decision. And I've done it live in one of the speeches I did. I hold up. I've got 100 trillion. I'll do it now. I'll just do it right now. I know I've got it here somewhere. I'll find it because it's pretty compelling. It's pretty powerful, and you should see it up close because it's something to remember. Somebody gave me this as a gag. They gave it to me at a Tea Party thing a couple years ago. I was just doing really small Tea Party groups, and somebody walked up and gave me one of these and said, "It's real money, you know." I said, "Oh, that's very kind of you," and I thought it was kind of amusing. I didn't realize the power of it. But I realize it now. Here's a piece of colored paper, and it's actual money. It's legal tender. It's actual cash drawn on the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and it's in the amount of Can y'all read that? I carry with me a banknote in the amount of $100 trillion, and it's got a picture of a pile of rocks on it. $100 trillion. This is legal money. This is not a joke. It's not a gag. It's worth about $4, I think, something. So here's a piece of paper that says, hey, pay to the bearer $100 trillion. Here's another piece of paper. Same thing. No different. It's a piece of paper. It's got pictures on it and a number on it. And this one has got a picture of Andrew Jackson on it, and it says $20 on it. And if you put any of these two down anywhere in the world on a bar table or on the top of a car in Bangladesh or in Mogadishu or in Buenos Aires or wherever, you put these two things down, everybody will take this one and not this one because they still believe that this piece of paper can buy something and this one can't. But no one believes that this is worth anything because they know that the economy there's no economy behind that. There's no credit. And what credit really means when you get right down to it is no one believes in this piece of paper. People still believe to some degree in this piece of paper. So if I work my tail off or do whatever I want to do, or I'm going to drive somebody around town in a cab, I'll take this piece of paper in exchange for my effort and my sweat. But I won't take this one because I think this is just a worthless piece of paper with a number on it. And what is this? It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, and the only difference is people believe in one and they don't believe in the other. And when you stop believing in this, it's game over. And you can't just keep printing these things, you know. If they started giving out these $20 bills, well, imagine, for example, that's an interesting thought. I stumbled on something useful, undoubtedly by accident. Imagine during the next Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, instead of dropping confetti, what if they were to just drop $100 bills on the street? And the reason I say it's an interesting thought is because you thought, oh my God, you can't possibly afford to drop $100 bills on the street. But if you think about it, the amount of money that the government is printing, just printing out of thin air, they could drop $100 bills on parades down the entire length of Manhattan 24/7 for the rest of the time. That's not even a dent in the amount of money. They're printing trillions, thousands of billions of dollars. So imagine if everybody just basically, you looked out on the streets of New York City and every day it was raining $100 bills from the sky. People just opening windows and just throwing 20s and 100s out there, just throwing baskets of them out there because they like the way it looks as it falls through the air. If you did that often enough, the first thing that would happen is people would start collecting up that money and they'd start picking it up and they'd start buying things and they'd start feeling really happy. Next thing you know, they came out to see a parade and they thought they'd see Justin Bieber's retirement tour, and the next thing you know, the sky's open and they go home with, $7,000 worth of money that just got thrown out the window like confetti. So what happens? Now everybody who was at the parade routes got $5,000 or $3,000 or $7,000 or $10,000 they didn't have before. So what are they going to do? If you look at Manhattan as a little microcosm for any limited system like the U.S. economy, let's say, if they start doing parades every day and they're dropping hundreds and thousands of dollars out the windows, now everybody goes home. They left with nothing, but now they go home with $5,000 in their pockets. So what are they going to do? They're going to go down to Best Buy and they're going to go down they're not going to go to the cheap restaurants. They're going to go to the expensive restaurants. They're going to start ordering steak dinners that used to cost $50, $60, $80. They're going to buy TV sets that used to cost $500. And the second that the people who own those stores realize, holy cow, everybody's coming in here with $7,000, that $60 steak dinner is going to be a $2,000 steak dinner the next day. The next day. Because if everybody can walk in and everybody who walks in the door has $5,000 on them and they want a dinner, you can make your steak dinner cost $2,000, $5,000, $8,000 because they'll pay it. So now the prices have gone through the ceiling. And what happens to those people who didn't get out there for the parade and catch the $100 as they came whistling down? What if they saved $5,000 over the course of 2 years of scrimping and having less than they needed? What does that do to their $5,000? It makes it worthless. $5,000 could have gotten you through months and months of food. But if steak dinners are $5,000 per steak now, then all of that saving and all that work is gone. It's gone. And I genuinely believe that that's what they want. That's what these people want. They want savings to be worthless. They want hard work to be worthless. They want everybody dependent on the government because that means they're dependent on them. They're control freaks. They're tyrants. They're rulers. They're dukes and earls and all these people that we fought to get away from. That's what they are. That's what they want. They want to rule over the ruins. They would rather be the masters of a nation of slaves than be the executives of a nation of free people. They want to rule. They want to tell you what to do. So that's how it works, Dan. And when you see good news about the economy, look deeper and you'll see the unemployment rate is down because people aren't looking for work anymore. And the stock market is at an all-time high because money is not what it was worth 5 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 years ago. And for the people who keep saying that the gold standard folks are lunatics, the reason people like the gold standard is because you can print money, but you can't print gold. Now, there are problems with the gold standard. The economy is bigger and legitimately bigger. There is, in fact, much, much more wealth. There's more wealth in the world for gold to be able to be accounted for. You can't really just say, hey, we should go back to the gold standard. That's not the whole argument. We'll get into that. But what you really need is you need something to control the money, because if the exchange medium is flooded, then the wealth becomes less valuable. And when the money, as they say, bad money pushes out good. If you have gold and you've got dollars, and as you saw in the Weimar Republic, every single day that goes by, your dollar gets worth less and less and less and less and less. You're going to take the gold and you're going to keep the gold and you're going to buy everything with the crap. And you could see that when they started replacing silver dollars and gold dollars, once paper dollars started to come on the market, people said, well, here's a dollar that's made out of gold, and this actually happened, and here's a dollar that's made out of paper. I need to go buy $1 worth of toilet paper. Which one of these two things should I spend? What do you think happened? People kept the gold dollars under their mattresses, and they took the paper dollars out and they bought stuff with the paper dollars, because 2 years later, that dollar in paper was worth 90 cents, then it was worth 60 cents, then it was worth 10 cents. But the gold is still gold. And I never know, the big challenge of the age for me is how much of this is stupidity and how much of it is evil. Every time I think they're this evil, I realize, no, it's possible they could be this stupid. But I think really, to save everybody time, when it comes down to the question of is Barack Obama and these progressives, are they either A, evil, or B, stupid? I think the answer you could probably just go with consistently and be right is yes. Just Shaky Bradshaw says, Holder keeps his word. He won't prosecute his people. Black thugs, no hate charges. White idiot hate charges. Basically what Jess is referring to is this knockout game thing has been, with, I think, one or two exceptions, huge numbers, essentially black gangs walking around trying to find white people that they can knock unconscious. That's the game. Somebody's walking along down the street, and you walk up behind them, or you tap them on the shoulder, you sucker punch them, and you try to knock them out. And when you knock somebody out, imagine, once they become unconscious, they fall down. And when they're unconscious, They don't protect themselves. They fall face first onto the curb, and they get irreplaceable brain damage, or they fall face first into a stair railing, and they have all their teeth knocked out. And up until recently, I mean, really, it's something like 99% of these cases are black gangs doing this to white people. And I've heard, I have not gotten into the details of the story, I've heard anecdotally that they found a white guy who did it to black people, and now all of a sudden it's a hate crime, and the full force of the United States government, which had not been used at all, to stop these things when it was black on white crime, now is being deployed because there's one case, apparently one, of white on black crime. And so now we have a hate crime, and all those white people who were knocked unconscious and suffered permanent brain damage or killed or nearly killed, too bad for them. Now a white guy has gone out and done it to a black person, and that person's going to get prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And because there are so many idiots out there, let me just be crystal clear on this, okay? That white guy should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Whoever did it is wrong, and they need to go to jail for the rest of their lives, in my opinion. If you do something that is that premeditatively evil, I think you just go to jail forever. So I'm not saying, hey, we should just let the white guy go. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not even saying that the white guys and the black guys should be prosecuted at approximately the same rates or this or that. I'm saying a crime is a crime. And if a crime is being committed by one individual against another individual, that individual that commits the crime needs to go to pay the price for it. But our Attorney General has decided it wasn't an issue, wasn't a problem. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna go after these folks. And now all of a sudden a white guy did it. So now all of a sudden we will. And the reason I like this question, Jess, is because these kind of things, I believe this I genuinely believe from the bottom of my heart. These kind of things that are so egregious, you have scores, if not hundreds, of black people knocking out white people, and the Attorney General says nothing. One white guy knocks down one black guy, and all of a sudden we're going to move heaven and earth to prosecute them for hate crimes. I think that these things are so egregious that I simply cannot see any other alternative than to say they are designed to make us criminally insane. I actually have come to believe that these acts are designed. They're designed to make people like you and me go nuts, grab a rifle, and shoot up the place. Because then they'll finally they'll have their conservative nutcase shooter. Because the guy at Sandy Hook and the guy at Aurora and the last guy and the guy before that and the guy in the Earth Day thing and the guy at the White House, every single one of them are liberals. Every single one of them. This last guy's who shot that teacher. He is a big old Obama liberal. They're all liberals. And they all call for these giant gun control things when these liberals lose their mind and start shooting things up. And then they find out they're a liberal. Well, that doesn't mean we can't get some mileage out of it, because we don't have to tell people they're liberal. But when one of them finally, after all of this psychological assault and all of this psychological intimidation and provocation, when somebody finally snaps on our side, then you will see when it is actually a real Tea Party person, then you'll see the real guns, rhetorical and legal guns come out. And I have to say this too. The fact that we have been so demonized, we've been so beaten up and intimidated, and we've had the IRS audits, and we've had all the surveillance, and we've had the weaponization of the tax code, and we've had been accused of every single shooting, every single one that we didn't do ever. Gabby Giffords was shot up by a Tea Party guy. No, Gabby Giffords was shot up by a liberal who was stalking Gabby Giffords. And we get it again and 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 again. And we still don't go out there and go nuts on these people. It makes me just so proud of being on this team. It makes me proud to be on the team where the good people are. I'm just proud of the fact that we don't go out and, shoot up the place. I mean, because we're good people. We leave these scenes cleaner than we find them. We go to protest something, and we don't do that very much anyway, because some of us have jobs to go to. But when we do, we get the permits, and we get the porta potties, and we get the police, and then we get the insurance, and then we go out there and we clean the place up, leave it cleaner than when we found it. And we're violent, evil animals. And the Occupy Wall Street crowd, who basically just set up rape camps and murder camps and destroy everything they touch, they're doing the hard work of standing up the truth to power. And we still not only are we still here keeping our tempers, and it's just an amazing thing. So, yeah, it's enough to drive. It's not only enough to drive you insane, Jess. I think it's intended to drive you insane. Jenna Rianne Murphy says, "What would it take for you to run for president?" Well, first I'd have to get new teeth. I'll finally be old enough to vote in 2016. Good for you, and it'd be an honor to cast my first vote for you. That's very, very kind of you. Look, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I address this frequently. I don't want the job. And I sure as heck don't want to try for the job. And the only thing I will say, because I don't want to give anybody false hope, because I don't want the job. I think I'm much more effective as a storyteller than I would be there. I think I can be very effective. I'm starting to develop a working relationship with Ted Cruz, who is in fact an attorney and a family man whose background is spotless, who's smart as he can be. He's temperamentally level and sound, and I can help Ted with the message, and I can help him with the rhetoric, because Ted doesn't need help with the principles. Ted Cruz gets it. Ted Cruz has courage, and Ted Cruz understands it. So I can bring some of the things that I'm good at to help him. That's a much better alternative for me and for you and for the country, is to find somebody decent who is, suited for this and willing to do all this stuff. But I will put this final caveat in there for all of you. If there's no one doing this, then somebody has to stand up and do it. Somebody has to stand up and get these ideas out there. And when I look at how easy it is to defeat these idiots, when I look at how easy it is to take Barack Obama apart in a debate, and when I watch how he freaks out when he's asked a tough question, when I think about what I could have done to him in 3 presidential debates, how I could have put that man, I would have had him weeping. And I would have been calm and happy and funny. I would have had my hands in my pockets just like on my logo. I'd just been sitting there with a little smile on my face saying, I'm sorry, Mr. President, does it make you uncomfortable talking about these things? Because I've got answers for all this stuff, and you should too, So, let's just find out what happens in 2014. Let's stop these people. Let's just stop them. And if nobody out there comes out, then, look, I love this country. This is not my first line of work choice. I really would rather have been spending last 5, 6, 7 years wanting to make movies. It's not to say I'm not grateful. It's not to say that this is not helping me make movies, because certainly the website and all that other stuff's been a tremendous asset for me. And I'm very, very grateful. I'm very proud of it. But it's not what I want to do, I don't like having to read all this stuff and see all this stuff and process all this stuff. It's just somebody has to do it, and this is when you really come to a place of like me. Honestly, me. This is the kind of trouble we're in. We're counting on guys like me now. Really, honestly, are things really that bad? And you get to that place where it's like, wow, and then you kind of just come to another place, which is, I have a feeling, I came to this thought very late, I just have a feeling that at that Constitutional Convention and at the signing of the Declaration, I think on some level, at least I hope so, I suspect this is true, that the guys that got together, the Founding Fathers, when they arrived in Philadelphia, and they started working on both the Declaration and then the Constitution, I really think they must have looked at each other and said 2 things. Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure most of them, and then there were a lot of big egos there, but I think a lot of them must have said, I'm surrounded by brilliant people, and I'm the dumbest guy here. And I think a lot of them also must have said, is this it, really? This is what's going to save this country? A brewer, and a silversmith, and a farmer, and a printer who's 78 years old chasing, 16-year-olds? Who this is it? honestly, there stands George Washington. No one can argue with him. He's the best looking, tallest, bravest, handsomest, richest man in the world. We would make our king. But really, this little lawyer from New York named John Adams, this eccentric kind of weird man from Philadelphia named Ben Franklin, and you've got this silversmith named Paul Revere, and the other Adams brother is a brewer, and Sam Adams is not only a brewer, he's probably a privateer. He's actually probably a pirate. You get right down to it. This is what's going to be the hope of mankind. Turns out it was. So, we are going to get organized this year. And we've got a couple years before 2016. 2014 is going to be the year of the common sense resistance. Mark my words. Common sense resistance is we're going to start put some ground organization. We're going to start putting a ground organization together. And look, if it turns out that the fate of the country is in the hands of people who can best handle rhetoric, then people who love the country and understand it, who are good with rhetoric, are going to be called to step forward even though they don't want to step forward. They don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. I can't. And I'll tell you something else. The reason I'd like to be president, the only thing I'd like about being president, and I've said this 100 times, is I'd like to be commander-in-chief. I'd like to fly F-18s onto the deck of our aircraft carriers while we are recovering assets at sea in combat, and I want to land on those decks. I want to go downstairs and say hi to those guys. I want to take off and go someplace else, and I want to jet into all these places. I want to visit missile silos, and I want to do a tour on a nuclear submarine. And I want to just be out there and tell these people how much the world is depending on them. And I would like very much to be able to face guys like Vladimir Putin, and especially these Iranians and all these murderers and Castros and all these other guys. And I'd like to look them in the eye, and I'd like to be able to say, you may think what you want about me. I don't care what you think about me, but I've got 2 million of the best people on the face of planet Earth behind me, and we are a bunch of steely-eyed missile men, and we are just itching for a fight with you, itching for a fight with you, tyrants and murderers. And the days of you assuming that we hate ourselves are over, Jack. I know who we are. I know where we come from, and the 2 million people standing behind me feel the same way. And we still got a little money left, and you don't want to see us pissed off. The world has not seen us pissed off since 1945. Don't do it. That I would enjoy enormously. But Jenna, thank you very much for asking. It's very kind, especially for a young person. And let's just go out and get them rhetorically. Let's see if we can stop them. Well, we still got time to see what's happening on. And Dave Deering wrote a comment right after that. And I've heard this several times. I just want to get this cleared up, just for the sake of the accuracy of it. In response to that question, David Deering said, if I remember correctly, Bill was born outside the United States and had at least one parent who is not a U.S. citizen. I don't think he's eligible for POTUS, though he'd be great in the legislature. That's where the real lawmaking power is, when the Constitution is being followed. That's actually not true, David. I was born in New York City. My father's an American. My mom's a Brit. But I was born in America to an American father and a British mother, which means that I am as constitutionally eligible. I'm precisely as constitutionally eligible to be president as the current president, because he too, presumably, was born in the United States of America with a foreign national father. That is not a naturalized citizen. I was not born outside of the United States and naturalized in the way that Arnold Schwarzenegger is. So the big debate was whether or not what the term natural-born citizen means. I am not a naturalized citizen. I am a native-born citizen, which means I was born in America, and I have an American parent. But my understanding of the term natural-born citizen, which is what the Constitution requires for president, is that you are born in the United States of two American presidents, two American parents. Which I think is the way it should be. I am, and I think it's the way it should be for obvious reasons. Because my mom is British, I'm partial to the British. I'm very partial to the British. I think I can make a good case for being partial to the British, but the president shouldn't be partial to anybody. You shouldn't have mixed allegiances. And I don't have any mixed allegiances. If I had to go to war against Great Britain, it would be a catastrophe, but I'd do it. So I am legally eligible to be president. I just wanted that clear. I've had a lot of people say he's born in Bermuda. I wasn't born in Bermuda. I grew up in Bermuda. I was born in New York City. And my dad was an American citizen. And I have a birth certificate. And my birth certificate looks like it came from 1959. It's got my name on it. And it's got all kinds of other details. And it's signed by people. And it's typed. And you can see from the style of the typewriter, the style of the document, the style of all of it, it looks like it's from 54 years ago. It doesn't look like it was printed in 1996, my birth certificate. In fact, my birth certificate is so old that it's a negative image. It's one of the first, these early mimeographs. My birth certificate is black with white letters on it. And it says, State of New York. Anyway, we'll talk about that more, kids. We're got a lot to do. Speaking of which, good aside for me to say, I finally tomorrow am picking up the last 2 of the virtual presidency things that have been composited by somebody else, and these things are 3 months late coming to me. And it's out of my hands, and I've been tearing my teeth out. 3 months late. So those of you who've already become members at BillWhittle.com, I now have the means to finish the Virtual President DVD. I'll be releasing the 3rd one this week. I've missed 10 days because of my mom and because of the teeth, and I'm way behind schedule, but just thought you'd want to know. All right, so moving on here. Ay caramba. Isaac Timmons says, strong female characters or strong characters who are female? And right below that, George A. Freeland wrote, strong female characters versus masculine female characters. I've talked about this before. I don't want to spend too much time on it again, but I will say this. This is a tricky thing here. Strong female characters or strong characters who are female. I'm in favor of both strong female characters and strong characters who are female, because I see strength as an emotional state. And there are many, 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 many strong women and many excellent strong female characters. The thing I have a problem with, and I've had a problem with this for a while, and I think there are going to be a lot of problems with this downstream, is I don't believe it when I see it. I don't think it's good for girls, boys, or anyone else. When I see, as I've said before, when I see Scarlett Johansson, who does not have magical powers, look, if she's Wonder Woman, or if she's, if she's an elf or a Vulcan or something, if she has superpowers, and she has superpowers, who's going to argue with superpowers? You can't argue with superpowers. But when I see again and again and again in all these detective stories and all these TV mysteries and movies and stuff, I see a 98-pound, 5'5" woman, fashion model, walk up to a grown man and punch him in the face and knock him down. Or if I see a protagonist on a show like, The Closer or something, some 98-pound woman running in heels down the streets of New York and tackling a 250-pound man and bringing him down to the ground through, application of a certain kind of a hold or something, we're going to pay for this. And as a small aside, you'll often see the female warrior in modern movies. What they'll do is, because some people realize, okay, look, this is a small girl, and like in the case of Brave or something, right, that animated feature. So we can't really have her punching out guys who weigh 4 times what she does and are much faster and much, much stronger, 2, 3, 4 times stronger than her. So what we'll do is we'll make her an archer, you see? That way she just got a bow. She's an archer. Well, it takes some strength to draw a bow, for those of you who've never drawn a bow before. So, look, if you ask me, am I in favor of a story where a librarian has a single mom librarian has a child, and a gang of rapists smash her window in her apartment in New York and come in from the fire escape, and she pulls a gun and blows them away? Is that a strong woman character? Yes. Am I in favor of that character? You betcha. You betcha. I absolutely am. But when we get into this second thing that George mentioned, masculine female characters, when you see women just out punching men, it's not only absurd, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for women. It's dangerous for them. Jeremy Boring told this story once. He was in a judo match or something, and it was co-ed judo, right? So you're wearing light padding, right? And you're out there, and he's fighting this girl, basically. And she gets in a couple shots and, hits him on the face a couple times and knocks him down or something. And she's running around the room, bragging about it. And Jeremy was just a kid. He said he was ashamed of himself afterwards. But they said, get back in there. And, and this woman just keeps coming up and hitting him. And he said, even though she wore this padding, he said, and after she kept hitting me, I just got so pissed off. She hit me in the nose or something and kind of, rang my bell a little bit or hit me in the nose enough to water my eyes. And he said, I hit her as hard as I could, and she just went down and didn't get up. And when she got up 3 minutes later, she was crying hysterically, sobbing, because when a male uncorks on a female, if something happens to break through that natural biological, well, it's not biological restraint, break through that restraint that good fathers put into boys, which is you never, ever, 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 ever hit a girl. When a grown man, when one of these 250-pound thugs in a movie is in a fist fight with Scarlett Johansson, who's like 5'3" or 5'4", and if that were happening for real, it doesn't matter what kind of leg sweeps Scarlett Johansson can do. It doesn't matter how good she is with punching. If that 250-pound man turns around and hits Scarlett Johansson as hard as he can, he could very easily kill her. But I will tell you one thing. If he hits her once, that fight's over. And so what's happening here? What's happening here is our moral betters in the social engineering department are trying to set up role models for girls, and they're trying to make girls into butt kickers. I don't know for a fact that girls like the idea of being butt kickers. I think on some level it kind of frightens them to think that they have to be butt kickers. But what do I know? Maybe I'm dead wrong about this. I'm happy to admit I'm wrong about that. But I'll tell you one thing. When teenage boys go to movies, this has been happening for 25 years now, when teenage boys go to movies and see teenage girls or see young women, small women, beating up grown men in life or death fights, killing them, breaking their neck, bringing them down, pummeling them. What they are doing, what our betters in Hollywood are doing, is they are telling both men and women that men and women can get into physical fights on level playing field, basically equal, and that is not going to end well, and it's not the men who it's not going to end well for. You keep doing this, and you destroy that sense that was bred into me from the first days that I can remember from being in elementary school on. You start to mess around with this idea that has to be put into males, that you never hit a woman no matter what. She punches you in the nose, doesn't matter. She doesn't matter what she does. If you start to eliminate that inhibition, then women are going to be very, very, very sorry that they went down this road. And it's not just because they're going to get into fights with men and men are going to hurt them. It's also because when they get into trouble, when they're walking down the street and all of a sudden a man comes along or two big men come along and all this other stuff, and they start thinking that they can pull these big kung fu moves out, not only are they going to get the living crap beat out of them, but the men, the boys who've watched Scarlett Johansson whipping these guys for 20 years, and it's not just her, you just watch every movie that's out there and watch every TV show that's out there. Some woman's going to go walking down to her car and she's going to be confronted by some guy, and the guy's not going to walk her to her car. Why would he walk her to her car? She can probably beat him up according to what we've seen on TV. So she's going to walk out to that car and somebody's going to come out of the shadows and she's going to call for help, and it's not going to come. It's not going to come. And then, as usual with these feminists, you're gonna reap what you sow. You know, their big statement, big statement, because it's so hilarious and it's so clever. It's so ha 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 ha. All the men in the commercials are idiots. They're either children or they're idiots. They're either, dad is either a complete moron. Honey, How do I use the electricity? How do I turn on the lights? Or I can't wait to play another round of my computer games. You know, when dad is that and mom is the sensible one and the smart one and the sensible, smart, grounded one, you're just sending that message again and again and again. Like I said, feminists were just so proud of this, you know. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. How empowering. How empowering. How's it working out for you out there? You radical feminists. You don't strike me as happy people. And I don't think it's funny, you know. I was about to say that I don't think you deserve to be protected by men, but whether you deserve it or not, men are going to protect you. Real men will protect you. They don't care. You know, you can talk this idiocy all you want to, but you know, take a look at what the requirements are for male firefighters versus females. Look at what the requirement in combat are. I saw an article about this today. Something a simple little thing. 3 pull-ups required for military service or military training or to get into basic, I don't know what it is. 3 pull-ups. 3. 98% of the men can do 3 pull-ups. 45% of the women can do 3 pull-ups. I bet if you take it to 10 pull-ups, I bet there's 5% of the women that can do it and 80% of the men. And so, you know, what do you say? Am I saying that women can't serve in the military? No, I'm not saying that at all. Am I saying women can't be policemen and firemen? Not saying that at all either. But apparently one of the things I have heard is the reason one used to send an ambulance out for somebody, you know, goes down, somebody faints or somebody hits a wall or somebody's crazy, you'd send the ambulance out. Remember those days? And the paramedics would go. But the paramedics don't go anymore. Not just the paramedics now. Now the firemen have to go. And you don't just see an ambulance. Now you see an ambulance and a fire truck or 2. And my understanding from people on the inside of this is the reason that the fire truck has to go in back of the ambulance is because somebody may need to be carried out of a building or carried into something, and the female EMTs are not they can't do it. They just physically incapable of doing it. And if we're not ready to recognize these things, we're in trouble. I don't begrudge women any occupation that they can qualify for. None. I am not one of these guys. I'm not one of these barefoot pregnant guys. I'm not one of these, oh, you should be lovely librarians, or, oh, that's really nice, sweetheart, make me a sandwich. I joke about it, but I'm not. You know, I've worked for women most of my life. They're as competent and incompetent as the men I've worked for. I know a couple of them personally. I know female fighter, I don't know any female fighter pilots. I know many female helicopter pilots, and they are doing a magnificent job of flying in harm's way, and they are likely to get shot just as dead as men are. Then I'm 100% behind all of this stuff. But if we're going to force combat soldiers who are carrying 100 pounds of gear or 130 pounds of gear in combat, and we are putting in there with them women who cannot carry them out of combat, not for lack of desire or lack of courage or lack of heart, they just can't, then we are going to lose some of our best people for political correctness. And I think that is absolutely disgusting. And I don't know if it's happened yet. I can't imagine it hasn't. But there already must be people who are dying or have died because first responders on the scene did not have the physical strength. It's not courage, it's not character, it's not intelligence, it's not skill. Didn't have the physical strength to get men out of building. Get them out of a building. So I'm sorry your daughter died, but we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings because we just wanted big, strong men who could carry them out of there. This is a real problem. That's a great question. So as usual, the Tiemann's Lounge continues. Isaac Tiemann's asked that question. Joshua Tiemann says, just in, A&E reinstated Phil Robertson. Is it just me, or has conservative America been pushing back? Yes, conservative America has been pushing back, and pushing back hard. And the reason, the final episode of Breaking Bad, which is kind of the coffee, the water cooler conversation, had, 10 million viewers, and every single week Duck Dynasty was getting 14 million viewers. You don't get those kind of numbers. Nobody gets those kind of numbers. So here he said something, that he answered rationally, calmly. He didn't use any slurs. He went to great pains to say, look, just because I disagree with the lifestyle doesn't mean I hate the person, and it doesn't mean I want to see them persecuted. We all are God's children, and we're supposed to love each other, and just because I don't agree with them doesn't mean that I think they're wrong. I think what they're doing is evil, and here's the biblical reason why I think it's evil, and I do evil things every day, and I spent most of my life being evil. I don't know how you get more gracious than that. And so people are pushing back. And look, the great thing about having 14 million people watching is A&E can cancel Duck Dynasty. As I said before, they canceled Duck Dynasty. And a week later, somebody, Game Show Network or Spike or somebody, is going to have a new show called Dynasty of Ducks. And it's going to have those same guys. And they're going to make a fortune. And when you hear these people, we're going to suspend you, but not really. Depends on how much, you really piss off both sides, right? Isn't that what happened with Cracker Barrel? And Cracker Barrel is a red state restaurant, and apparently they sold some merchandise. So Cracker Barrel comes out and says, we are stopping all of our Duck Dynasty support because of the hateful thing that this guy said when he basically read the Bible. And so everybody who ever went to a Cracker Barrel ever, because I don't know a lot of people who were out here in Los Angeles going to these cocktail parties in the hills, those are not big Cracker Barrel patrons, the LGBT community. They don't go to Cracker Barrel that much. You go to Starbucks a lot. So Cracker Barrel makes this boneheaded statement, and the next thing you know, there's a boycott against Cracker Barrel, and then Cracker Barrel apparently backs down, and it's like, you know what? If you're going to make a statement like, we're suspending them or they're fired, okay, make it and stand on it. When you say, well, we're firing them, and then the world explodes, well, we didn't really mean firing, then you not only are you stupid and rudderless, you're stupid and rudderless. So, and that kind of blends into the next question. I'm sorry, that was the same question. There's been pushback. Alec Baldwin, Martin Bashir. Excuse me. Truth Revolt has been a big part of Alec Baldwin and Martin Bashir. Truth Revolt, which is set up by the Horowitz people. TruthRevolt.com, I think, got 4 Drudge links in a day. They've had 1 million views in a day. Truth Revolt works because Truth Revolt is a counterinsurgency special forces operation designed to play the same rules that they're playing against us. And if they're going to start taking our scalps, Truth Revolt's position is, well, we don't think it's right, and we don't like it, and we don't think that you should lose your job over saying something vile. But we are tired of having our guys lose their job and their guys getting promotions. So if those are the rules, those are the rules. You want to hack the arms off of our Marines when you surrender under flag of a truce with a white flag? We want to send Marines out there to accept your surrender and give you food and water and treat you like honorable people. And then you gun them down and hack their arms off. Then that's the rules we'll play with, Imperial Japanese Army. So one way or another. There you go. We're already over time here, but we'll be done under 2 hours. Bill Thompson says, when the Free Frontier gets underway, Free Frontier, for those of you who don't know, is my membership-based plan to have a private space program. Have you given any thought to colonizing Venus? Fascinating research has been done to suggest that a habitat with Earth-normal atmosphere and sea level pressure would float naturally on a sea of carbon dioxide gas high in the atmosphere at an altitude that would have Earth-normal sea level pressures and temperatures. You could extract water from atmospheric H2SO4, no danger of explosive decompression. Environmental temperature controls are largely unnecessary. Natural radiation shielding and construction could be much simpler than a vacuum-tolerant station. Imagine a real-life Woodalopolis Cloud City. We had back in around about 2007, we did something at Eject called Ejectia, which was a kind of a fictional community, online community. It was going to be like Second Life for people who thought about things. And we had some great renderings of cloud cities, and this whole place was going to take place up in the mountains and stuff. Funny you mention that, Bill, because I thought the limit of how far I could see with Free Frontier, it's not the limit of how far it would go, it's just the limit of how far I could see realistically, was if you got to the point where you were building orbital vehicles, then in orbital stations, inflatables, then you had a vehicle that had that was assembled in Earth orbit, was designed to go from one orbit to another. Didn't have to get down to a gravity well, wasn't a lander. Could carry a lander, modular thing. You want a lander? Great. You want a nuclear reactor on the front end of it? Fine. You want to put a sample return thing on the front? Fine. Whatever. Just stick it on. But once you get to the place where you had built in orbit a vehicle that had sufficient delta V to take you from one place in the solar system to another relatively quickly, I would build 2 of those ships, and I'd have them go out on the same vector and then have them dock nose to nose and spin around so that they'd provide artificial gravity for each other, and they would be each other's lifeboat. I just keep upgrading that model. The reason I keep coming back to this, Bill, was when I talked to some aerospace people about this. They said, well, what would you do with it? Would you go to, I guess you go to Mars. I said, I wouldn't go to Mars first. What would you do? I said, I'd go to Venus. Venus? Why would you go to Venus? No one talks about Venus. Why would you go to Venus? Venus is essentially the Earth. It's just a few hundred miles smaller. Why would you go to Venus? I said, because the energy requirements to go to Venus are far smaller than they are to go to Mars, and it's a much quicker trip. You're going in rather than out. The spacing between the planets in the solar system is kind of remarkable. It's, whose law is it? I love doing this show, because once I say something, I get all the answers I want in about 3 minutes, 2 minutes. It's the, how would I not know this? There's a law that functions the spacing of the planets in a solar system. And so Mercury is close to the Sun. Venus is farther away from Mercury's orbit than Mercury is from the Sun. The Earth is farther away from Venus's orbit. So the solar system expands on a linear rate, and there's a word for that. Somebody's law or somebody's theorem. But basically, what it means is, every time you go to a further planet out, it's not only further out, it is increasingly further out. And every time you go to the next one, as you start getting out to the outer solar system, it's really like twice as far. Saturn is like twice as far as Jupiter, and Uranus is twice as far as Saturn, and Neptune is twice as far as Uranus. It just goes, it just expands. So Venus is closer. Venus is the closest planet, and I want to say it's about 20 million miles away at conjunction when it's really at its closest point. So it takes less energy. And the reason I would say Venus is because, look, you can't live on Venus. Venus is a hellhole. Venus is one of the Bodes law. Thank you, Matt. What Venus is, Mars has about 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. It's almost all carbon dioxide. Mars's atmosphere is about 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. Venus is 100 times the Earth's atmosphere. It's all carbon dioxide. Enormously high pressures, which means enormously high temperatures. Venus would be a hot place even if it was in the Earth's orbit. So Venus is a very tough place to go to the surface of. But as Bill was saying there, you're not talking about going to the surface. But my point was, look, if you wanted to do the minimum mission that got you to a different planet, you could do a flyby of Venus. You don't even go to orbit. You could basically do a flyby of Venus and be back here in 3-4 weeks if you did it right. I think maybe a little more. And so then you'd be able to say, well, what did you do? Well, we went to another planet. Really? Yeah. We were the first people to fly to another planet. We flew to Venus. We went there in a spaceship and we came back. It's pretty cool. And it's much lower energy than Mars, and it's a much faster trip. And I think it's a great place to go as a shakedown cruise, because I agree with most people. There's not a lot you can do when you get there. But I never heard anything, Bill, about this idea of airborne, atmospheric-borne cities in Venus. And was it Q-Spark Matt said that the law that governs the size of the solar system and the relationship of the planets is Batman's law. It ought to be Batman's law. Okay, we got 2 to go. Joshua Tiemens, because of course we did hear from Isaac Tiemens, and then Joshua Tiemens. And Joshua Tiemens again says, hey, their thumbs up, folks, I don't control this. Said, hey, Bill, I'm sure you've noticed the fashion in society of claiming that being able to cry openly is being strong and brave, and how it's so important not to be ashamed of our emotions. Is crying being truly strong? When is it acceptable to cry, aside from rewatching Star Trek, the original series? And somebody answered that by saying, when the national anthem plays, or when your dog dies or something, a single tear can roll down your flinty cheek, leaving a trail where it wipes away all the dust from the trail. which I agree with. I have to tell you, I've got a bit of a issue with this one, although probably not in the way you think, because I'm one of those guys that I just really bawl at beautiful things, and I always have to preface this, and I always have to do this whole tap dance song and dog and pony show. So I'll do it again. I never cry when I'm in trouble. I never cry when I'm really in an emergency. I've had a couple of engine failures, and I've been the first person to see a couple accidents, and I don't think about crying at all. I just completely ice down, and I just get the job done. But sometimes I'll see things that just I'll cry at an air show. I'll see an F-15 come by and just do a 90-degree brake, and you just hear that sound. You see the orange glow of those afterburners, and you hear that air just being ripped to pieces, and it just makes me cry. It's so beautiful. I can't get through the end of It's a Wonderful Life no matter how hard I try. I watch, I'll go to a baseball game, and every now and then, more often than not, sometimes people just sing the national anthem, and I think we've been doing this for 200 years, 150, 180 years now, standing out in the field watching people, catch balls and swing bats and sit there and have a hot dog, and and here we all are, and we're not at war with each other. It's the Red Sox versus the Yankees. It's not conservatives versus liberals, and that's beautiful, and that makes me feel that way. And I was very self-conscious about it, and I'm still self-conscious about it. A couple of these virtual presidency things I just couldn't get through. I just bawling like a baby on one of them because the NSA one was just pissed me off so much, and it was so anti-American, and what I was saying I thought was so powerful, and you just hear my voice just cracking. And I was really ashamed of it, really ashamed of it, and really wish I could get a handle of it. And then I read something that really helped me a lot, and that was that Winston Churchill had this quality, that Churchill would go to he'd go to church, and they'd sing the prayer for those at sea. I'm sure the something hymn, it's the something hymn, the Mariners hymn. Eternal Father, strong to save. That thing, I hear that thing going, and I just and Churchill was exactly the same way. He'd cry at his children's baptisms. He'd go to the opera, and he'd hear some beautiful piece of music, and he'd cry. He'd go and visit the pilots out in Spitfire and Hurricane squadrons. He'd go to Biggin Hill, and he'd sit there and look at these kids going up, and haven't slept in 3 months, and they're sleeping in their airplanes, and they crank the sirens up, and these guys just get up there and they go out and fight these Germans, come back and literally pass out in the cockpit taxiing back. Sometimes they didn't shut the engine off because they just passed out from exhaustion. And then he would go and see them, and he'd cry about all this stuff. He said, I'm a blubberer, he would say. I'm a blubberer and a baller. And but when he didn't cry he didn't cry when the bombs were falling. He didn't cry when he was looking at the ruin of Dunkirk. He didn't cry when they sank the Prince of Wales. He didn't cry when Singapore fell. He didn't cry when Rommel was rolling him back in the desert. He didn't cry when any of that stuff happened. So that's kind of my attitude about it, I think, Josh. I think big emotions I'm certainly a victim of big feelings, and sometimes big feelings just get more than I can handle, and that's just a way to release some of the beauty of it, and the moment, the passion of it, and the power of it. So I don't mind people that do that. I do have a problem with men who cry when they shouldn't be crying. Men who cry. I have a problem. I have a problem with this guy, right? I have a major problem with this guy. I look at this guy. I don't want anything bad to happen to him, to Pajama Boy. But I look at this and I just say, I don't know. This strikes me as a useless individual, not a disposable person. I don't know what this guy's good at other than snark. He's sitting there like an infant in his onesie, his little one-piece baby pajamas, with his little hipster haircut and his little ironic expression, and he's getting ready to ruin your Christmas by talking about Obamacare, and he's holding a big old cup of coffee. And I think if he weren't holding that coffee in two hands, I'd probably feel a little better about this guy. But this guy is what we're turning into. This guy is a man without chest. He's a weak, useless individual. He doesn't. I guarantee you, this guy doesn't know how to change a tire. I guarantee you, this guy doesn't know how to apply a tourniquet. I guarantee you, this guy doesn't know what to do if a car flipped over. I guarantee you, he's hopeless, useless, not a man in the way that I understand the term. I'm sorry. He's obvious. Somebody described him as a face walking around in search of a fist, and there's something about this dude. By the way, we find out now that he is in fact a complete liberal douche, and then he calls himself a liberal something that I can't pronounce. And basically what he says is, we go around and we like to yell at people, and we like to argue with them and make them feel bad, and tell them how awesome liberal is, and we love to get in their faces and argue with them. And I'm like, well, here's my card, Pajama Boy. Why don't you and I have a discussion? If you've never lost an argument in your life except for one time, why don't we stack us up and see how we do? Because I assure you that Pajama Boy is not going to be bringing me something I haven't heard before, and I'm not ready for. So this is the new manhood, right? This is what the perfect storm of feminism and the self-esteem movement gives us. They just, look, I've seen these people before, and I've seen them just, I know, well, what are we doing? Well, it's raining. Well, what about the car? Well, I don't know what's the matter with it. I don't know. I think the car's making a funny sound. It's making a flopping sound. What's the matter? I don't know. Well, maybe we can call, my dad can come and tell me what, your dad's not going to change your tire for you. Pajama Boy, you should learn how to change your own tire. And, I don't know. I was on the plane and coming back today, and once again I see, right behind me, of course, children screaming. I don't mean crying. I mean screaming at the top of their lungs because they wanted some. I want my, and they're 3 or 4 years old, and I don't blame the kid. But you hear the parents. First of all, they're not saying, you be quiet. They're not saying, you behave yourself. Nothing. Parents are just sitting there letting this kid scream in this pressurized tube as loud and as long as they want to. And every now and then, right behind me, and then it's, I want, now. And every 4 or 5 minutes, you'd hear this, now, sweetie, we don't want to have a timeout. We talked about how if you have this, that's not good for you. And we remember how we talked about that if you get this, then you can't do that. And if you talk, and it's like you're trying to reason with a creature that doesn't have the neurons. It doesn't have the neurons, you idiot. I just want to smack those parents. I don't know where we're going, folks, but I'm seeing more and more every day that we are raising. That there are no adults. There are no adults anymore. No one knows how to do anything. No one can stand anything. No one. I told you I got into an argument. I was called a murderer, basically a murderer, and a Nazi by a 19-year-old woman. And I turned to her and I said, "That is offensive and disgusting to me. Offensive and disgusting. I'll spend 4 or 5 minutes of my precious time explaining to you why you're wrong. But before we get to why you're wrong, I'm just going to tell you how revolting and disgusting it is for you to level that charge." And she bursts into tears and leaves the room. Why were you so mean to her? Why was I mean to her? Oh, you mean after she called me a murderer? Why was I mean to her after she called me a murderer? I don't know. Maybe I'm just in a bad mood. We're in real trouble. We're in real trouble. I suspect that it's going to take. I'll tell you one thing I will say. If things collapse economically and we find ourselves sitting around burning tires, roasting rats on spits, some significant percentage of not just of the millennials, but significant percentage of all of us, are just going to off ourselves. They're just gonna, if once it dawns on them that the internet is out and not coming back for a year or two or ever, and that yes, now you're stuck reading books by candlelight, and now you have to get up in the morning and you have to go and get water from a river and bring it back, and you're going to have to go out and trap a rabbit and pull its little furry fur off and eat it, and or else you're going to die. Some significant percentage of the population is just going to check out. But the rest of them will learn very quickly, because they're weak and incapable, because we let them be weak and capable. And when the stuff really hits the fan, I hope it doesn't happen, but that's the only thing I think is ever going to cure this. If it turns out that the electricity goes away and the food sources go away and the internet goes away and all this other stuff, Pajama Boy here is going to be faced with a choice. He's going to do one of two things. This guy is either going to just basically check out. He's just going to check out, or he's going to realize that his ironic arched eyebrow and his reference to a Family Guy episode and all of this other stuff is, when he realizes that, he's gonna either change and eat, or he's gonna or he's not gonna get to stay to be this guy. And the very same Zachariah Thomas, who this entire show is based around, apparently just said, do you realize how offensive that statement is to millennials? I don't know if he's being sarcastic or not. I guess it is offensive to millennials. I'm sorry. There's plenty of weaklings in my generation, and plenty of weaklings in Generation X, and plenty of weaklings in Generation Y. But there is an incapacity in the millennials that I've never seen before. And one of my very best friends in the world, last night I was in Florida, I hadn't seen her in a long time. Her kid called, and she'd been away for a while, and the kid just wouldn't get off the phone. Had to come home now, had to stay in touch with her, had to be in voice contact the whole way back. It's like, I don't know. Maybe they'll surprise us. Arctarian says, I'm millennial and I approve this message. I'm glad to hear it, Arctarian. They're great millennials. Some really terrific millennials. It's just like everything else, good people and bad people. Doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter where they come from. But I'll say this for you millennials, as I said once, I think last time, you didn't do this. You didn't ask for this. You were raised this way. You were given everything, and you were not allowed to resolve conflict or learn how to resolve conflict. And I can hardly blame you for expecting your parents to be there if your parents have been there at every single moment of your life to make things better for you, to fix things, drive you places, and talk to your employer, or put you up in the house, or get you a car, or you want to whatever. And here it is. It just appears. I don't see how we can blame you for this. You just, that's the natural reaction. It's the parents that I think should know better. Soon to be talking about this a lot more than I would like, I think, but of all the things I'm worried about, this is what I'm worried about the most. I'm really worried about it. We'll find out. So we'll see. Anyway, the whole purpose of the common sense resistance, I keep thinking more and more about this. I'm going to try and write an article about this between now and next Wednesday. I'm way behind on my writing. I'll get that done over the break. I'm going to basically just do a little sci-fi story about, life in the future and what it looks like and how it feels and stuff. And that really is going to be ultimately going to be the story of millennials. Of course, there'll be future millennials, people 20 years from now. But that is basically going to be the story of one or two or three young people who make a decision to get off the grid and go out and learn. They're gonna go out and have this chip pulled out of their arm without anesthetics. And that'd be the first time they've ever felt any pain in their lives. And they're going to take it about as well as I took it, which is not very well. But they'll do it. And after they've done it, they'll realize, okay, now you know what it's like to be in actual honest-to-God pain for hours. Real pain for hours. And it makes you less afraid, is what it does. Makes you less afraid. That's all I want. I just want better citizens. I want tougher citizens. I like kind people. I'm not against kindness, and I'm not against softness. I just want softness to be something that is a reserve of strength that sits on top of strength rather than replaces strength. That kind of thing. Anyway, what do you know? It's 8 o'clock, 8:10 on a Friday night, and I'm sorry about the late show. I've been traveling a lot with my mom. Thank you so much for all the kind words about her, and meant an awful lot to her. And she's back in Florida now, and it's really challenging. Those of you who have elderly parents know it's challenging, and when you get into real clinical, memory loss and things like that, it's tough. But it was a great Christmas, and I really had underestimated. I mean, I had a pretty good idea of how much time it was going to take, and how much of my daily time was going to take, but I really completely underestimated it. So I owe you guys a lot of work, a lot of website updates that I didn't get a chance to do, but we'll get all those done starting tomorrow. And we get some sleep tonight, which will be nice. I haven't had any real sleep in a week. So anyway, that is episode number 53. And I think Ustream says starting in January they're going to start deleting episodes that are older than 2-3 weeks old, which is fine for me. Once it's up on YouTube, I'm happy. So anyway, it's great to be back. And it's great to have the big white movie star smile. And the more I look at it, I think, I don't know if the teeth are a little out of alignment. They're going downhill. But these are temporaries. We'll get it fixed. And we won't, they won't be quite so game showy bright. They'll be a little more natural looking, and they won't feel like plastic. But it's great to have them fixed, and I'm glad I won't ever have to go down to the ground again with another tooth issue. I should get them fixed before the zombie apocalypse happened. That was my thought. Get them fixed, that way I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to live in a world without Novocaine, honestly. I really don't. Anyway, episode 53 comes to its dramatic and somewhat overdue close at 2 minutes and 13 seconds. It's not a 2.5 hour one, but it's not a trivial one either. So thank you very much for watching, as always. We'll get this up on YouTube on Saturday. And we're going to start picking up in the last couple days of the year. But I'm warning you all, when 2014 clicks over, we're coming out of the gate really, really running hard. 2014, we're going to move the mail. So, as always, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. And thanks, as always, for the support and everything we get on Facebook and all the messages. I know I don't respond to nearly as many as I'd like, but I read them all. And they mean the world to me. So until next time, I guess I'll just say until next time. And wishing you a very fond Christmas holiday, and hoping your New Year's is going to be as good as I know mine is. Thank you very, very, very much, modern medicine, for turning us from this into this. And then, back to this. So it's a happy white smile, and I've never had one before, and it's nice to feel like a modern person, modern American, and I'll probably end up smiling a lot more often. So Happy New Year's, everybody. I get the feeling I'll talk to you before New Year's, probably do a Tuesday show. But it's going to be a grand old time, and we'll see you next time.